another episode of Data Gurus. This is Sima Vasa. I'm so excited to welcome Holland Martini, who is the Chief Insights Officer for GOODQUES, as well as the co-founder of the company. Welcome, Holland.
Hi, thank you for having me, Sima.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. In our prep discussion, we had so much to talk about, not just about business, but about motherhood, entrepreneurship. So I'm excited to dive in.
Yeah, me too.
Before we get started on the company and understanding what you guys do, I would just love to understand a little bit of your background and how you got to this point.
Yeah, no, happy to. My background is quite interesting. I think it's a little unique for the situation I'm in. It's getting more common, but I grew up very focused on numbers. I'm a math person, analytics through and through. I love regression modeling and the things that wouldn't generally steer you towards finance.
Yeah.
But I'm like such a creative person by nature. I love art and I have kind of a bold personality, which is a little bit avant-garde for like a data person.
Sure.
So I think I struggled with what I really loved and which is problem solving and what I was good at, which was data, and then my personality, which was not going to be at a bank or in a more rigid professional field, quite frankly. And so I found this really unique position, which was marketing mix modeling, which was like really breakthrough back in the day, like 15 years ago. And it was the application of things that I loved, which was data, numbers, and solutions, and marketing and creativity and strategy, which felt like a really nice fit. And that was the beginning of everything. That was kind of my breakthrough into marketing and brand.
Okay.
And my understanding that my skill set and what interests me could fit. So I was there for a few years, then natural next steps. I went to a media agency, Universal McCann, worked there, also doing some modeling, helping them understand their advertising. And then I was recruited over to Gray Advertising, and that is where I think I really flourished. They had a strategy and creative team. Obviously, they're a creative agency.
Sure.
And they really wanted to infuse data into their strategy.
Okay.
And the beautiful thing was I was kind of given the keys to the car in terms of what does this look like for our organization? So I really built up that team there and really started to understand that data, it's not just to validate, it's to inspire. That's like all a creative team wants, right? They want to be inspired.
I love that tagline.
Brand.
Yeah.
So,
Data to inspire. That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah. And there is where I met my co-founder, Maria, and she was often the receiver of the research that I was executing. And I think we both really saw a white space of, a lot of more creative thinkers realized that they needed data. That is why Gray went and kind of started bringing data into their strategic field, but there were not a lot of research companies building this from the ground up. Right. And that was what was different. And so we met, and our brands are really, really different. She's strategy brand through and through, and I am 1 + 1 = 2 and never.
She was your client at that time. Is that right?
She wasn't a client. She,
okay.
I mean, maybe like an internal client.
Okay.
She was at Gray as well, running strategy for beauty.
Got it. Okay.
Oftentimes the research that I was doing was infusing her strategy, which was then going to creative. Yeah.
Very cool. And so you guys worked together to kind of identify the white space and went out on your own. How long ago? I think it was like right before COVID, wasn't it?
Yeah. So the idea cropped up in 2018.
Okay.
We left our jobs in the fall of 2019.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. And honestly, luck was on our side. Maybe we're just very smart, but we left it probably like worst case scenario in terms of timing of leaving a job. I mean, no one could have anticipated that, but the thing that was really incredible was that was probably one of our best years in terms of clients. Everyone was redirecting their budget because they were like, what do we do? We need research. Yeah. And so we just happened to show up in the right place, right time with the right skill set. And it really boosted the trajectory of our company.
That's amazing. I actually believe that it is luck and hard work. I think it's a combination of both. You have to have both to be successful. I don't know what you think of that.
No, my brother's a fisherman, and I always joke around with him. I'm like, you just have good luck. And he was like, it is not just good luck. Yes, they have to be there. But he was like, I have to have the lure and like the right depth, and I have to have the right lure for the right fish. And I've never thought about that until now, but it's such an analogy to what we do.
So talk to me about the reason I'm so fascinated with what you guys are doing is, as an industry, everybody's been talking about respondent experience, data quality, being able to story tell and be to let clients really understand the key findings and research. And, I feel like you guys have kind of addressed every part of that value chain in a very creative way.
Yeah.
Um, talk to me about from kind of just from you know, the things that you hold very, um, the truths, if you will, or the pillars of what you consider critical to the foundation of your company.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think creativity is definitely at the forefront of what we do. I always like to caveat that because I think so many times in any industry, if you get
Yeah,
creative, it's at the expense of something.
sure.
And
Yeah.
that was really what we were trying to avoid. So I think in like the late 2010s,
Mhm.
there was a real emphasis on human centricity. And that was answered by just making sure you're thinking about your consumer, period.
Right.
And it's obviously evolved so much so that, we went to a conference recently and every single booth, every single person was talking about human centricity. But I think what we realized was it's not just putting the consumer at the forefront of your
Mhm.
decision, the brand.
Mhm.
It's making sure that everything you do, every little step, you're
Yeah.
thinking about the person that you're interacting with.
Mhm.
And so when we think about that, we think about it in two phases. One is the person you're interacting with when you're executing the research, and one is the person you're interacting with when you're delivering the research, which is the client. I
Right.
think a lot of people forget that.
Yeah.
And same with the respondent. And so when
Sure.
we first launched GoodQuest, we are like, okay, if we're going to believe in human centricity, we need to think about every single human we are interacting it with from point A to point B, from getting the brief to the delivery. And I think what makes us really different is when we're executing our research, we're not just trying to understand the person and the respondent. That's obviously the end goal.
Right.
But we're talking to them like people and we're thinking about their experience with us. And so that comes to life in multiple different facets. We have this GQ, GoodQuest, creative table of tactics that we use. And when we think about our first interaction with the respondent, how do we talk to them?
Right.
What language do we even use?
Yeah.
Do we use slang? Do we, and how do we do that? And so when we are even writing, like, let's just talk about a standard survey, we'll go through and we'll do so much secondary research prior to the study to make sure that we understand the actual language that they're speaking in. So, for
Mm.
example, I'm a new mom, and
Right.
people always like, when I was like going to get pregnant, there was all these like slangs or like DH, which is like your dear husband, or like my new like envy. And I was like, what is all this stuff?
Right.
Now, if I received a study in that way, I'd be like, oh, these people like
They
really know.
know.
They
Right.
know. And like, I know how to react to that. And I know how to talk to
Sure.
that. And that is the language in which I'm speaking.
Right.
It like new moms is one, but like, we worked with developers and
Mhm.
they have so much slang. And if you talk to them in a way that you feel like you don't understand them, they're going to dumb down their response and then all
Right.
to seize out the door. Even things, and sorry for rambling, even things like qualitative. So like focus groups. One
Yeah.
of our clients is an alcohol company. And they were like, "Oh, yeah, we normally do our focus groups here. It's like this, like, white room with, a subs and, like, some peanut
Right.
M&Ms, and
Yeah.
it's, like, 1 p.m. on a Tuesday."
Yeah.
So we do all of our focus groups in a bar at happy hour. Like, how avant-garde. It's not that
Yeah.
crazy, but it allows people to disarm, like, I
Yeah.
will have more than just this drink right now because that's how much I would drink, and I'm able to respond to it
Yep.
differently. So that's the respondent side. And then in terms of the client side, I mean, clients are people. I I made research that was 100-page decks, and I didn't even like them. And no one does. And, I think a lot of our clients are brand and, consumer insights teams, obviously, they're very familiar with this kind of output, but it just doesn't need to be like that.
Right.
And so I think, one thing that we still face a lot, and honestly, we still feel it. We felt it with a client the other day, um, is that big equals rigorous and
Yep.
complex equals
Yep.
good.
Yep.
And I think, having background in a creative agency helped us challenge that.
Mhm.
Because I actually think if you can get a point across simpler, you're smarter. It
So
takes a
true.
lot of work to
A
shorten
lot.
it.
And in some ways, I find with research, and this is how I was trained and my brain works, is like I still need to go through that huge set of data and understand it and digest it to be able to come up with, you know, the key insights that might be 3 pages or, you know, whatever it might be. But it's not like you ignore the robust data that sits underneath it. It's just presenting it in a different way.
Exactly. I mean, you know, we have clients that when they do get the output, it is so clear and it's so simple what they need to action. It almost feels like, well, where'd all the work go? And so we instituted what we called a mess meeting, where we literally showed people behind the black box. Like,
Nice.
you guys want to see it? Let's
Yeah, let's go through it.
And it works for some clients. Some clients are like, oh, okay, actually, yeah, you're right. Close that box. You're good with the output. But I think no matter the organization at this point in the development of research and how it's feeding brands, people want something exciting to read. And they just need to know that the rigor is happening. And so even our toughest clients who are the most traditional are starting to really crave the more creative output that we've provided.
Let me ask you, when you talk about the questions, and truly the respondent experience, a lot of surveys are 20, 25 minutes. Like, do you guys consider that when you think about crafting your research, the time it
100%.
takes?
Yeah. People need to want to participate in something. Otherwise, they're just going to phone it in, right?
Yeah.
And so when we think about the research, we think about how can we get people excited to answer and be engaged. And part of it is just realizing that they're speaking to another human and not just like a robotic data person on the other end. I think what we've really done and what has been different for GOODQUES is we've interrogated all of the traditional norms of research and asked, why are we doing that?
Yeah.
What's funny, and like I'm glad that you brought it up, is like the reason those questions and surveys were so long is like the traditional route of surveys was all really based in psychology and medicine and things that were super complex that needed a battery of questions in order to understand things. And, you know, not every scenario that
requires that.
And so there are times, absolutely, where you really need to dig deep. And if you do need to dig deep, you need to make it extremely engaging. You need to not only create a story for your output, but a story for the input and help guide people and get them engaged. And you also have to be really creative with the questions that you write. There are ways to ask 5 questions in one if you're good at it. And so I think that's really what our team has excelled at. How do we make sure that we get the full picture without overwhelming a respondent? That's what good conversation is in the first place, right? It's like a first date. You don't just sit there and ask a battery of questions, but if you naturally ask the right question, you get so much out of someone.
Are you saying that because you're kind of putting yourself in the shoes of the person who's responding to the questionnaire, you can still get a 20-minute survey completed by a respondent because you are speaking their language?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, they feel like they're in a conversation with you. And there's also different ways to surveys at this point. I think, you know, when you think about like a quantitative survey, you think of like a Word document with 20 questions, literally like number 1, number 2, number 3. There's so much technology out there now where you can ask questions that feel like a casual conversation. And on the back end, it's able to quantify a lot of the output. So people are just chatting. You have other people, respondents interacting with one another now. Technology that allows that. And it feels like a forum and a community. And then we're able to get quantifiable numbers out of it. So it's all what is the right method for the client and the ask and the respondent. And that's why we have this like creative tactics table, if you will, because depending on the brief we get, we pull different levers to make it the right.
Got it. And you had some data I think you shared with me in terms of the measurement of effectiveness as it relates to the way you ask questions. I think something about open ends.
We have like a few. We've tried and tested all of our. So I am like data through and through. So there's no way you can tell me something works without needing to prove it. And so we've proved everything. And so, you know, by asking the questions in a way that's copywritten for a colloquial language to the person that you're speaking to, we actually see in an open end 2.2 times more words in the response. People are literally giving us more context because they want to answer the question. It's not like, no, yes, yes. It's yes, because of this. And thank you for asking. We go on and on. People get nice, funny. And then we also see less I don't knows or others because, you know, in close-end questions, we really are thoughtful about all of the questions
The
and the
choices.
responses,
Yeah.
so that when people are looking at the responses and trying to choose which one is most reflective of them, they pick one that actually feels reflective of them, not the best version of my thought. And
Right.
so that's even made our typing tools, which are when you're segmenting an audience and then
Mhm.
you build a tool so when other people come in, it buckets them in the right audience so that
Right.
you get to them.
Yep.
Typically, those are like 75% effective, which is fantastic.
Mhm.
Ours upwards in the 90s. And it's because of that exact thing. When I choose that answer, it really feels like me.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah. I'm proud of it.
Let me add, there must be a particular type of psychographic segmentation of researchers who take hold of this approach, right? Because you have the classically trained, I'm going to change one word, it might change the results of the data. That's going to be
Yeah.
a problem, right? Trackers, non-trackers. Talk about some of the clients that you feel like instantaneously that they're going to go for this approach.
Yeah. So you'd be surprised. We're getting more and more of the traditional folks, and I'll explain why, because I think they
Okay.
made the way we explained what we do a little bit better, quite
Yeah.
frankly. But I'd say the people who there's two camps of people. Some are just creative by nature. They
Yeah.
really understand that different ways in are going to get you different outputs, and that's good, not necessarily bad. Just
Right.
because you can't compare it to your previous work doesn't mean it's not accurate.
Right.
It's a different way of approaching it. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
the way that we ask our questions, we're able to get to answers in a different way that are a lot more accurate. And I think
Mhm.
there's a lot of open-minded researchers out there that realize that there hasn't really been that much revolution in the research world. Like, we've added a lot of technology that make
Yes,
things
we have.
faster,
Yeah.
but we haven't really done a lot of things that are truly innovative to the
Mhm.
approach. Um, and I do think that there's like a new wave of researchers in here who recognize that and are just like off the bat interested. And then we have this other guard of folks who come to us who are frustrated, and they are like, they have a hypothesis and they do research and they're like, we just know this is wrong. We know that
Right.
people are saying one thing and doing another, and it's wildly frustrating. And we have so many examples of how our research methodologies can kind of
Mhm.
close that say versus do gap. And I can give you an example of a really funny one that always sticks. We had a company come to us that has an at-home STD testing kit.
Yeah.
I don't know if I told you this one.
Yes, you did. But
Yeah,
please share it.
exactly.
It's
And
really
so you
relevant.
could test for STDs at home. And so when you just ask, hey, do you have unprotected sex to people? And
Yeah.
some of them are like, no. Because
Yep.
like, even if it's anonymous,
You
you
just
want to
don't
be the
know.
best
Yeah.
version of yourself
Right.
all the time.
Yep.
And then we exposed people to a meme. And we didn't just decide to do a meme because memes are funny and cool. Memes, we really thought about in this specific cohort of people, what are ways in which people admit to things without
Yeah.
admitting to things.
Right.
Memes is like it's really popular in
Yeah.
our culture. So we found this meme, condom sex is garbage, just give me an STD.
Yeah. Yeah.
And 38% of people said this is representative of me. And so the market size changed drastically. I mean, the response was like 10% to one, 40% to the other. And so, I mean, I think that camp of people who are like, I know my research is wrong. I'm just like, at this point, I want to try something new, end
Yeah.
up here. And then you're right. There are the traditional agencies that are a little bit afraid of us. But I think those are the ones who fear us because they think it's creativity for creativity's sake.
Mm.
And why fix what ain't broken?
Right.
But
Right.
when they find out that it's creativity because we are really interrogating the
Yeah.
status quo of existing models out there and like realizing flaws
Mhm.
and having creative solutions to make those research methodologies more applicable to culture and people today,
Mhm.
there has been a lot of interest.
Yeah, I love what you said also in the sense that we have had a lot of innovation in the industry, but it's primarily been driven by technology.
Yeah.
And to look at this from a methodology perspective and a consumer engagement model or engagement model across the board, respondents, customers, clients, employees, it's refreshing. It really kind of puts back the importance of truly understanding your stakeholders.
Yeah.
Very powerful.
Yeah. And you're right. I think, there's always the ebb and flows of when there's like an emphasis on speed and efficiency. And you often find that that's like when a new guard of researchers come in and they want to do things faster. And then it's at the expense of the output. And they're like, okay, we're good with doing it the right way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm happy I'm fine being in a wave of maybe things need to be faster, because I know it always goes back to the quality of the work at the end of the day.
I also love the way that you guys do qualitative research as it relates to moderators. Can you share a little bit about your approach?
Yeah. I mean, it goes really hand in hand with writing colloquially for studies and making sure you're speaking the same language. And so what we do is we actually cast moderators, which is quite funny. And we really do it. Like the casting calls.
Do you really?
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah. We have a battery of different, we wouldn't really like a proper casting call where people are reading a script.
Right.
Battery of people, hundreds of moderators at this point. And we know everything that they're passionate about, everything that makes them who they are.
Nice.
So that when you're talking to them, depending on what the research is and the project is, you're talking to someone who understands you, and you're more likely to open up to them. And also just situations come up where it's important to have someone who understands you on the call. I'll give you one that's a little bit more, I'll just give you the mom one first because it's top of mind. That's my life now. So we were interviewing new parents. And for the moms, we made sure that we had other new mom moderators on the call casting so that they could talk about it. Because as a new mom, if you ask me what it's like, I don't know, like, oh, are you sleep deprived? Like, you have no idea. And that question from someone who has never had a kid, or I don't know, just has a different experience, is almost rude.
Right.
And so, we had this one woman who actually had to breastfeed her baby on the call. And it's a video recording. And so she felt comfortable enough because she's like, you don't care. And she was like, oh, no, I don't care. Like, my baby's in the other room. And it's just like,
that's cool.
Create this environment where all of a sudden all the guards are down. And like, that's a very
safe environment.
It's a very safe environment. And that's a very, that's a rare situation where that happens.
Sure.
On another end, and where it like, it becomes just as relevant to other audiences, we were interviewing developers who are specifically developing AR technology. I mean, these people are so smart.
Yeah.
And we had other experts on the line. We're interviewing them because we want them to resonate. We want them to open up.
Right.
And we found that it became combative.
Really?
Such a new wave of technology that it's not all objective yet. A lot of it is subjective. And so people weren't like really willing to give away their techniques or willing to talk about it, or they had different opinions on how to approach things or what was the best technology. And, we as researchers, we watch all of them, and we made a quick shift, and we actually shifted to people who are interested in AR and getting into it. But not there yet. And then these developers started to take a mentorship approach. They were so open and like willing to learn, and I have someone under my wing. And the whole dynamic of the conversation changed. So it's not always casting someone who's just like you. It's casting someone who feels relevant to you that you are willing to open up to.
Got it.
And that's been really interesting. I think the developer one was one of the funniest things. We did focus groups, and it was like crickets because people were just like not willing to give away.
Cautious. Right.
Yeah. And we did IDIs with in-depth interviews with younger who were interested in the field. It was like, let me tell you everything.
Yeah.
I'll tell you everything. We're really particular and cautious about that. And we're very flexible.
Awesome.
Yeah.
How long does it take you on the deliverable side to really put together the deliverable that's, ultimately consumed by the client? Because less is more for sure, but sometimes I feel like data does inspire, but you have to wait for that inspiration, and the timing of it can be a little bit hard.
Yeah. So our team is made up of strategists and analysts. So really like classically trained brand strategists that know how to take something that might seem small and make it big. And then classically trained analysts who are just so excited to get deep into the data and will only give you the important things back. They know the numbers to not give the strategists.
Right.
Don't get too excited and run with it. And And we always have both on the teams the entire time.
Okay.
And so as the more like analytically, mathematically, classically trained data folks go through all of the research, they're feeding it to strategists. And now, like, we've been working together for so long, we
Right.
each other's language, we learn from one another. I'm more of the math person, by the way. Maria is more of the strategy one. And so, like, as I go through the numbers, I'm like, oh, this feels interesting, this feels interesting, this feels interesting.
Yeah.
Handing it to the strategist, they're like, oh, that's cool. That's neat. Oh, can you look for this too?
Yeah.
And so
I love that.
It took a long time to get here, but
Yeah.
now here it's actually quite seamless.
Right.
I would argue that it doesn't necessarily take any longer to do the outputs in the reports. It's just a different method to get to a better place.
Yeah.
And, we have designers on staff, right? So it's not, I think a lot of things that we've learned over the course of launching our company is don't put a square peg in a round hole. I am not a designer. I will never be. Taking a class in Canva and being like, okay, I can make this look pretty, which is never going to be the answer. And so have a designer do the design, have the math person do the math, have the strategist do the strategy, but make sure everyone understands each other and speak the same language, and make sure everyone knows what good looks like. And I think that has been the key to success for us.
That is really important, to get alignment on what is good, right? Around those different functions.
Yeah, I mean, we do. So we're a totally remote company.
Yeah.
Have been pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
And so we have offsites all the time, and we always theme our offsites. And one of our offsites, the theme was, what does good look like?
Yep.
So how does a strategist pick up on, like, this number looks wonky? How does number person pick up on, like, you can't hang your hat on this insight? How does anyone notice this deck is heinous?
Right.
And so as long as you know what good looks like, you don't have to necessarily be the one to fix it. And I think that has really optimized our team. And also, like, you get to do what you love. Like, you have me designing a deck. I'm not a happy person. It's going to take me forever.
Right.
It's just not my skill set. And so
I open it and close it. I'm like, I'm never going to get through this.
Yeah. And the confidence that it builds our team. Like, we have a team of completely women, and it's so important for me to watch them feel confident in their career. The confidence that they have of being like, I am the expert.
Right.
It's actually really nice. And there's something to the master of none.
Yes.
It is important to know other different disciplines, but to be an expert in one, I still think is quite important.
It's valuable. Yeah. The key is the conductor of the orchestra to make sure that you can get all those people together. And it sounds like you guys are doing a great job. Let's just talk a little bit. You just said that your company is composed of all women. Was that by design, or is it just happened that way?
It just happened that way. So Maria and I identify as women, and we started the company, and then we brought on someone who I had mentored for a while, and I loved. She does amazing work, and then we hired someone else. And honestly, we did an open call interview process every single time.
Yeah.
We are the last people who are going to look at anything outside of your brain to determine whether you should be on our team. And it just always ended up that way. And
fascinating.
We joke around now that if we hire a man, we have to hire two.
Yeah. So that's
because they're going to need someone to lean on.
That's awesome.
I mean, our team we have a small core team, and everyone just happens to be women, and they all happen to have a really interesting experience. Yeah. All of them have experienced what it's like to be the only woman on the team. Yeah. And so I think, when we say we have an all-female team, I think a lot of people are like, oh no, like, is that, I hate to say it, but the common assumption is like, is that a lot of personalities? And I think,
or is there cat fighting, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, in the data world, I think we're all still pushing to get more representation of women.
For sure.
No, like, pushing one woman out of the way to get top. That doesn't exist in our field.
Right.
Or I hope it doesn't much as other fields that are predominantly female dominated, and everyone is just trying to build each other up. And I do think by designating experts on our team, it gives people such clear roles that there's no
There's clear lanes, for specialty.
Yeah, they're all actually very close. It's funny. 2 of them went on vacation to Italy, and I was like, oh gosh, you guys can't all be best friends because then the whole out.
Funny.
But
Great.
yeah, it's been a really
Awesome.
lovely team, and they're so fun to mentor.
Sounds like a lot of fun. What's the one lesson that you've learned about entrepreneurship that you would share with future entrepreneurs?
That's a tough one. I mean, there's one that I always say to the point that I feel like it's getting a little old, but for me, I think what has always been a key to success is being comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And just realizing that that moment of discomfort is a moment in time. Talking to someone you don't feel like you're qualified to be talking to, writing an email to someone that you think is not going to respond.
Yep.
Dipping your toe into something that you are trying to learn that you feel like maybe your company shouldn't necessarily be there. And so for me, every time we've branched out and done something, like, for lack of better terms, a little ballsy,
Sure.
my dad always says, "As worst comes to worst, tomorrow was like yesterday."
Cool.
Yeah.
Very
And
cool.
so, like, they don't answer, and, like, that person didn't speak to you
So what? Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that was really important to us was learning that it's okay to say no,
Mhm.
even if it feels like a sacrifice. So at the beginning of our company, there were a lot of people who came to us for requests that might not necessarily been a good fit. And I
Right.
think for a small moment in time, we took them anyways because the
Sure.
money mattered and the clout mattered, and we wanted clients, we wanted to be big,
Mhm.
but it distracted us from the end game.
Yep.
And I think being able to say, no, that's not the right fit for us isn't
Yeah.
a bad look for you. It
Yep.
actually, in the long run, helps you define who you are and what you want in a company. And I think that's also been a really big learning lesson for us. Every time we take projects that don't necessarily feel like the right
You
fit,
feel it.
you
You
feel
feel
it,
it.
and it distracts you from work, and
Yep.
it ends up taking longer than you had
Yep.
planned. And so I think just having a little faith
Yeah.
that, which is hard to do when
Yeah.
you eat what you kill, but having a little faith that saying no to things that don't feel right is for the best.
Yeah.
Has played a really big role in our key to success.
Yeah. That's so good. I completely agree with that. And sometimes that's where you learn the most about yourself too.
Yeah.
Right. That you actually, you have faith, number one, that it's going to work out, even if you turn down like a big project that's not a good fit for you. It's
Yeah.
betting on yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard, but it always, I never have regrets about the ones
Yeah.
that we don't do.
Good. Well, Holland, it's been such a pleasure to meet with you and learn more about your company. I look forward to keeping in touch, and I love what you guys are doing. It's
Oh,
fantastic for the industry.
thank you so much, Sima. And this has been a blast. Thank you.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed the conversation.